Hello, my name is John from CyberWatch, and this class is powered by CyberWatch Hive. You're welcome back to this class, and in this class, we'll be talking about or learning classes and objects. You know, Python is an object-oriented programming. All right, so it means we use a lot of objects and classes in them. All right, and they help objects and classes actually helps a lot in development, okay, in programming. All right, so Python also supports the concepts of objects and classes because Python in itself is an object-oriented programming. So we'll be going into learning what all these objects uh, and classes are. All right, so an object is simply a collection of data like variables, right? And methods like functions. So similarly, a class is a blueprint for that object. Don't worry, I'll break it down, all right? So before we learn about objects, let's first learn about classes in Python. All right, let's take classes because it's from classes you go ahead to get objects. So a class, like under Python classes now, okay? So a class is considered a blueprint of an object. Okay, that's how I see it. A class is considered a blueprint of an object. Don't worry, you get to understand more. All right. So we can think of the class as a sketch, right? A sketch, like a prototype, like a building plan, like a sketch of a house, like a building plan of a house, right? It contains all the details about the floors, the doors, the windows, etc. All right. Because when you have, what I'm saying is, when you have a building plan, building drawing, it shows how the output, like the total construction of the house, will look or should look. So based on this description, we build the house. Like the house is, in this case now, is the object, but the building plan is a class. I hope it's sounding better now. Like if you need to build a car, you say, okay, for example, a Toyota. The Toyota will design how the car will look. Okay, that design is actually what we call a class. Then when we use that design to now build a Toyota, or the Toyota company or Mercedes company, all right, goes ahead to now finally follow that design of the car to actually produce a car. That car that was produced, or that is produced, that was produced actually, is referred to as object. So since many houses, using the house example now, can be made from the same description, we can create many objects from a class. All right, I hope that's very clear now. So now, to define actually a class, we use the word, like we define function and we use the word def, like this, to define a function. So if we want to use a class, let me do this class. Okay, if we do class, we use this word, it means we are defining a class. All right. So, and the syntax is gonna be uh, class. All right. Okay, let me do this. Okay, sorry. Class. So now do class name. Okay, class name. The same way we have for function. Okay. Then underneath we now have description, like class descriptions. All right. So here we have created a class named class name. Okay. So the underneath are the properties, okay, that we're going to be of the class, okay, that is going to be created. All right, here that's the description. So I think what I'll do, let me move this. Yeah, let's do this. Let me just drop this like this. Yeah, I think it's better this way. Descriptions. All right. So let's see an example. All right. Let's say okay, let's do this example. All right. So let's go ahead and say let's define a class of bike. Okay, let's say now go ahead and do class bike. All right. So this description now, this one that we gave, all right, we'll now go ahead and do let's say what do we want to what do we want a bike to have? Like we have like I said, a class is like a plan, right? So now this is a bike and we want to have a bike. Okay, we want to create bikes. So what do we want a bike to have? A bike should have a name. All right, and we'll do equal to, let's make it open like this, okay, because a bike can have any name. All right, and let's say bikes also have gears, right? So a bike can have a gear. Okay, let's give a 0, okay, because bikes can have different gears. Okay, so here bike is the name of the class. Remember, bike here is the name of a class. Now the name and the gear, all right, variables are variables inside the class with default values of just open quotes and 0 for the gear respectively. Now one thing you need to know that all these variables that name the gear, okay, in any class variables are also called attributes. All right, they are called attributes. All right, so now let's move on to Python objects now. Okay, so let's comment this one out like this. Okay, let's drop another one and let's say Python object. Okay, sorry, let's do Python object. So let's come down here now and say, okay, now an object is called an instance of a class. All right, an instance like the creation out of a class, a creation of a class, a creation that was gotten from a class. So suppose bike, all right, is a class that we can create objects like bike 1, bike 2, bike 3, etc. from the class. Okay, here's the syntax to create an object. All right, so we'll now do object name is equal to class name. So we'll do object. Okay, let me still comment it out that way. All right, and do object name, because object we want to create object name is equal to class name. But mind you, the class name will have parentheses like this because it's a class. All right, so let's see an example. All right, let's see an example. Let's also go ahead to use the bikes example. All right, so let's still bring down our bike class here now and do um class. Okay, let's do it like this way. Let's say create a class. Okay, let's do it here like this. Let's drop another one and say example. All right, so now do create a class. After the example, let's drop this before we now do create a class. Okay, that one is just we'll now go ahead here and do, sorry, class. What's wrong with me? All right, create a class. So now go ahead and do class. All right, and go ahead and do bike like that. Okay, then we'll do this. Then what are the variables? We'll now do name equal to open parentheses. We'll now do gear. Let's use the variables we used before. Sorry. Gear is equal to 0. Let's do that. Okay. Then the next one, let's create objects of class. Okay. So let's drop another let's create object of the class. Okay, remember to create an object, look at the syntax. Object name is this. Okay, so let's say, like I mentioned before, let's say let's use object name bike1. All right, so we'll now come here and say bike1 is equal to, follow this line 12. Okay, is equal to, what's our class name? Bike. All right, bike. So that's it. Here, bike one is the object of the class bike. All right, this bike one here is the object of the class bike, which is this. All right, now we can use this object to access the class attributes. All right, what are the attributes? Like I said before, I mentioned earlier, they are the variables here. That's the class attributes. All right, so let's go ahead and access class attributes using our objects. Okay, and to access class attribute, we use the full stop or the period notation to access the attribute of a class. For example, all right, you know how many attributes do we have here at the top? We have the name and we have the gear, right? So let's actually go ahead and do let's actually go ahead now and do bike one dots. Now what are we going to access? The name and the gear, right? Okay, so go ahead and say bike one dot. If you check, we'll see gear and name. So we'll now do name. So the dot is what we use to access it. That's what I said. Name is equal to, we'll now do let's give a name like mountain bike. All right, mountain bike. So and now to access the gear, we'll now do um, bike one dot gear. All right, that just is how to access the gear. All right, so here we have used bike1.name and bike1.gear to actually change and access the value of name and gear attributes respectively. All right, so let's actually continue to um to write, to just do a full thing now. Okay, so let me go ahead and comment all these ones out. All right, because by count the gear we can actually go ahead and say it's equal to 11. Okay, so it's equal to 3, sorry, 13 and all that. All right, so let's go ahead, let's comment this one out. Okay, let's comment this one out and go ahead and do and go ahead and write out some code. We'll still do follow the level that we did before. All right, then we'll go ahead and add a lot of things there, and we'll go ahead and print things out. So let's go ahead and do class. All right, let's say bike, that's a class. Okay, so what are the variables? We'll go ahead and say name, okay, is equal to, let's give it leave it open like that. Let's say gear is equal to, let's say 0. Okay, so we'll now go ahead and come here and now do let's create bike one, that is an object now. Okay, bike one dot, let's say, sorry, before we do that, let's now do create our object and say bike one. Okay, bike one is equal to, all right, class. Sorry, bike one is equal to bike. All right, then we'll do this. Okay, then after we've done this, this is at this level, we can now access the variables there because we created an instance, okay, of the class, which is bike one. So I can now go ahead and do bike one dot name. You see, dot name. Without this line number 31, you can't actually access anything inside. Okay, we'll now do bike one dot name is equal to, let's also do mountain bike. All right, then we'll now do bike one dot gear. All right, let's go ahead and give let's say 11. All right, so now we've been able to instantiate the class, like create an our object bike one, okay, and we instantiated it with the bike class. All right, and now we're accessing the attributes or the variables already. All right, so let's go ahead and now print let's go ahead and print what we have, the information we have already. So we'll go ahead and do print. Let's use our F formatting. All right, so let's do bike, sorry, um let's do name. You can say bike name or name. Okay, what am I typing? Let's go ahead and do name equals, remember that we'll now do bike one dot name. All right, remember that, right? That's not what to explain now. Okay, so now do comma, and I will say gear, sorry, gear. Okay, let's give a space here. Gear, so I'm say gear, right? We'll do bike one dot gear. All right, so that's the how to actually print it. So if I go ahead to run the code, you see name is mountain bike, gear is 11. All right, so in this example now, we have defined the class name bike with two attributes, name and gear. We have also created an object as an instance of the class bike one of the class bike. So finally, we have accessed and modified the properties of an object using the period notation, like the dot notation, right? So the same way, we can also create multiple objects from a single class, all right? Multiple objects from a single class is sorry, a single class, all right? So let's go ahead and do and try to do that. So let's comment this one out. Okay, let's close this. So let's say we have uh, okay, let's actually name it. Let's say we have let's say creating multiple objects from a single class. So let's say we have a class of employee. So let's go ahead and do class. Let's give it employee. Okay, so let's now say employee. Let's give it a variable employee. Okay, what will okay, let's just do employee ID because that's what we can do employee name and all that. So let's just go ahead and do employee ID. All right, let's say it's equal to ID. Let's say it's equal to 0 since it's a number. All right, 0. So we'll now come here and we'll now create our classes. So we'll now do employee. Sorry, I'm a bit fast here now. Employee one, okay, is equal to class employee. All right. So make sure you put the parentheses there. So we'll now do instantiate this one to employee 2 is equal to, let's instantiate it also to employee. All right. So we can now go ahead. Always remember this step. If you remember the steps, okay, to help you. The first thing that we did is to create a class, okay. The next thing is to instantiate the class, meaning we are creating the objects, okay. If we have more employees, you can go ahead and do the employees, okay, and add the more employees. So here we can now go ahead and now access properties, okay, using our employee. So okay, so we'll now do employee. Let's start from one dot employee ID, you see, is equal to 0001. Okay, it's okay, let's see, 1001. All right, that preceding zero is what it's complaining about. All right, so let's go ahead and do employee 2 dot employee ID is equal to 1002. You understand? Now we have we are accessing the attributes, okay, or the variables of the class employee. Okay, so let's say the next thing that we're going to be doing now is we'll print them out. Okay, let's go ahead and print them out. Are we together? So let's go ahead and do print. Okay, we can now say let's use our f function and do employee 1 ID is. So we'll now drop this and do employee 1 dot employee ID. Okay, then we'll now go ahead and do the same thing. F, okay, employee, sorry, employee 2. Let's give a space there. Okay, employee 2 ID is. Then we'll go ahead and drop this. All right, do employee 2 dot employee ID. So let's go ahead and run this code now and see what we'll have. See, employee 1 ID is 1001, employee 2 ID is 1002. So you see, basically, that's how to actually use our classes and objects. Okay, so we have created 2 objects, okay, from the above, and that's employee 1 and then employee 2 of the employee class. All right, so let's quickly do something. All right, that's the method. You know, we can also define a function inside a Python class. A Python function defined inside a class is called a method. Note that. That's if we declare a function, that if we create a function inside a class, that function is referred to as a method. All right, and in real world scenarios, we're going to see a lot of functions, or you might be seeing a lot of functions in a class. All right, so let's go ahead and do and uh, and do an run an example. Okay, I have the code written somewhere, so let me go ahead and copy out and paste. Okay, to save our time, copy and paste and bring it in here. All right, the code that we're going to be using in this. That way, let's comment this one out. It saves us a lot of time. All right, so I'm going ahead to now drop. Okay, but I'll go ahead and explain. So now we are creating a class called room, and we're given a class variable of length and breadth, because we will be calculating the area, okay, of any object that we're going to be creating. Okay, so now the method to calculate the area is, this is where we are bringing a function which is called a method also. We'll now do def calculate area. All right, and the parameter is self. Okay, this self actually means that uh, that it's referencing the current instance of the class, that is referencing itself. All right, and is used to access variables that belong to the class. All right, actually it does not have to be named self. You can call it whatever you like, but it has to be the first parameter of any function in the class. Okay, in the case where we have more than one parameter, okay, you can say, let's say for example, self, we'll say comma, that is, we have multiple parameter, name, age, like that. Okay, so it must be the first. This self must be the first. A name cannot be the first. We can't have name. All right, then we'll now have self. Okay, you can't have anything like that. Okay, but you can actually, instead of naming itself, you can say my self. Okay, then you now do comma name, comma age, and all that. Okay, so that's by the way, but it's very important, I tell you. Okay, so let's still go back to self. Okay, so we'll now do print area of the room. All right, is equal to, we'll now do self dot length. Now this is how we will be accessing the uh, the variables now. So we'll now go ahead and do self dot length, okay, multiply by self dot breadth. All right. So we'll now go ahead and do outside. We'll break out of the class now and do study room. Maybe we want to calculate for study room. So study room here now is the class. All right. So we instantiate it. Okay. We'll now do study room is equal to room. All right, room is the class name, like we did for employee and we did for the other ones. Okay, now we'll now go ahead and do we'll assign values to all the properties. So study room dot length is equal to 42. Study room dot, which is this very study room, we're giving it its own attributes now, or variables now. So study room dot length is 42.5. Study room dot breadth is 30.8. So to access method inside the class, you can now go ahead, meaning want to use this one now, go ahead and now do study room, which is this very one that we've instantiated with the room already. Okay, study room dot, all right, study room in this case, like I said, is our object now. We'll now do dot calculate area. The name of the function is calculate area. So since we have studied these variables assigned to study room already, and we'll now do study room dot calculate, it means we're going to use these variables on or in this very function. And since we have tied our class to our object already, it means we can access this function. Okay, let's go ahead and run it. You see that area of room is this. Okay, so if we go ahead and change this to, mind you, what do we have here initially? 1309. Okay, 1309. So let's go ahead and change the code here. Instead of 52, let's say sorry, instead of 42, let's say 62, and this one, let's say 50. If we go ahead and run it now, you see 3175. All right, 3175. Okay, let's undo. What do we have before? What we have now is 3175, right? We run again, you see we have 1309. See that it's changing accordingly. All right, so actually that's how we can actually see work with methods also. All right, we can actually work with methods. So from the what we've just done, the example I just dropped, we have created a class named room, okay, with attributes length and breadth. Now we have a method called calculate area. Here we have created an object named study room from the room class. All right, when actually we then use the object to assign values to attributes length and breadth. So when you notice that we have also used the object to call the method inside the class. Okay, so here we used in the example, we have also used the dot or the period notation to call the method. So finally the statement inside the method is executed. All right, so before we actually finish, okay, this session, I want to introduce us to something, okay. So and that's what we call Python constructors. All right. So earlier we actually assigned the default value to a class attribute. All right. We assigned the default value to a class attribute. Okay, that's when we were doing class bike. If we go up, okay, we go up, we're doing class bike and all that. You see class bike, name this, gear that. All right. Now, and we went ahead to instantiate it. Okay. However, we can also initialize values using the constructors. For example, okay, let me do this. Since I have it written down somewhere, also, so that will be faster. The class is actually long already. All right. Let me comment this one out. Okay. So I'll go ahead and drop this. So now we have class bike. Okay. Now construction functions now. So we are going to have def underscore underscore init underscore underscore. Then before we open the brackets, okay, this is a function. Okay, to initialize everything. So we'll now have self and we'll have name equal to something. So we'll now go ahead and do self dot name is equal to name in this case. Okay, before we go ahead, we break out of the class and do bike one equal to bike. All right, we understand that. Okay, now here actually in this we have dot dot like under underscore 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 init underscore underscore the parentheses. Okay, that is actually the constructor function that is called whenever a new object of that class is instantiated. All right, now the constructor above initializes the value of the name attribute. We have used the self.name to refer to the name attribute of the bike one object. You remember what I said before, okay? So that self, I described it before. So if we use a constructor to initialize values inside a class, we need to pass the corresponding value during the object creation of the class. All right. So what I'm talking about actually is after this, okay, instead of we now saying bike one dot name, no, we're not doing that again because we are using the constructor here. We have self dot name, so it's not just a name already. Okay, so when we have self dot name is equal to name, what we're going to be having here now is we are going to be assigning real values like bike one equal to bike, which is this bike, the class. Then we'll now do this. Assuming we have what do we call it? Assuming we have uh, sorry, in that case we're not going to have this again. Okay, so assuming we have uh the after the name we have gear. Okay, like gear, and we do equal to, let's say, 0. Okay, you see that it's grayed out, but as soon as we now call it out, we do bike one, okay, equal to bike, and we now do, let's say, 5. You see that instead of being grayed out, if I do this now, it should come out, okay, live. Okay, it's not coming out live because we are supposed to have self dot gear is equal to gear. You see that is now live now. Okay, it's now live now. So that's actually how to uh how to create these things. Okay, that's actually how to create these things. So you can actually go ahead and do print bike one. We say print bike one. Let's go ahead and print and see what we're gonna have. See, it's actually this. Okay, so we can now go ahead and say print bike one dot whatsoever. Okay, name and all that. Okay, you can say print bike one dot name. Okay, so we run it and say mountain bike. All right, so because we've assigned the value here now, so Basically, that is it. Okay, in real world scenario, you're going to be seeing, like I've said it before now, a lot of methods, a lot of constructors, this and all that. Don't get confused, just go through them. You understand the basic, the foundation is what we've studied here in this class. All right. So far so good. We have been able to deal with um, classes and objects, okay, in this class, and we've learned a lot in this class. So like I always say, practice, practice, practice. That's just the secret of coding. That's just the secret of software development, or programming, as you may want to call it. So thank you very much, and I will see you in the next class. Bye for now.